Again guys, and welcome to episode 55 of Quattroporte, the review series for Gran Turismo's selection of sedans and saloons, both super saloons and also sports saloons or sedans. And in this particular episode, we're featuring a vehicle which, alongside some others in the series, vehicles such as the Vectra, the Citroën Xantia, aren't exactly exciting cars. They're vehicles which could easily be defined as boring or dull. They're just normal cars. The kind of cars you could easily see on the road pretty much any time, depending of course on where you live. And these cars aren't designed to break records, they're not designed to be fast, they're not designed to be amazing, they're just designed for people who want a car that does the job. Those kind of cars are, for obvious reasons, not the kind of vehicles that people usually have much interest in on a racing game. That's not hard to understand. They're just not designed for that, so why would they be any good? And the vehicles that I mentioned, the Vectra and the Xantia, aren't particularly amazing cars. They're not bad, and they offer sleeper appeal, but even so, the vast majority of you guys watching these videos won't buy those cars and don't particularly care about them. Maybe you're not a sleeper car fan, and if you're not, that pretty much narrows you out of the argument, really, because that's all those cars are good for, being sleepers. This is, to be completely honest, another one of those cars. This is not a vehicle that I'm going to turn around and tell you is some hidden gem in the game, something that has Nissan GTR levels of tuning capability. I wish it did, that would be an amazing sleeper car. But it just doesn't. It's the Nissan Primera, the 2001 model I'm using here, and overall it's one of those cars which is just designed to get you from A to B. But, that being said, like the Vectra and the Xantia and some others, it does have sleeper potential. So if you're not a fan of sleeper cars, this car probably won't really appeal to you, and this review won't really apply to you. If, however, you do like sleeper cars, vehicles which most people never use or probably never even buy for the most part, cars which are easy to overlook in races, in the dealership, etc., vehicles which don't really appeal to anyone from an excitement point of view, but vehicles which at the same time, under the right circumstances, can potentially be race winners. This is potentially one of those cars. So the question is, does it deliver similar levels of sleeper appeal as something like a Vectra or a Xantia, or is it potentially a little bit better? Something along the lines of the Alfa Romeo 156, or maybe the Lexus GS300, with those two being really the pinnacle of sleeper cars on Gran Turismo as far as sedans go. They are brilliant sedans and have incredible performance. Well, unfortunately, this isn't quite as amazing as those, and the main reason why is because it just doesn't have the tuning levels that those cars are afforded. The 156 has great tuning potential, it's allowed to have more power than most of its rivals. Likewise with the Lexus, it's an extremely powerful sedan, so for it not to be quick would be kind of difficult. This car, much more like the Vectra and vehicles like that, doesn't have a huge amount of power to work with. But being as it is a front-wheel drive sedan, especially one which isn't necessarily as much of a luxury car as some of the other bigger sedans, it is lighter. So no, it doesn't have an insane amount of power or torque, but it's not actually shifting that much weight either, and that can potentially provide you with a vehicle that actually has surprisingly good handling and deceptively good average speed potential. And average speed potential is something that I talk about on the channel a fair bit, only with certain vehicles, but there are certain vehicles, notable ones being stuff like the Mini Cooper S, the Alfa Romeo TZ2 Giulietta, and vehicles like that, which don't have a huge amount of power. They don't even have a huge amount of straight line performance for the most part, but what they do have is very little weight and very good handling. And that handling allows them to do something which is very, very useful, and that is keep that average speed high. They don't have as much power to accelerate up to that speed, but they can maintain higher speeds through corners because the handling is so good, and that also makes them easier to drive. Now, typically you'd associate that kind of thing with smaller sports cars or hot hatches. In the case of a sedan, that advantage is much rarer, and this is definitely one of the cars that has that advantage. The handling is by far the best point about the Primera. Now, as far as spec, it's underwhelming. It doesn't have impressive specs for the most part. It produces 390 horsepower from a 2-litre turbo engine. As we already said, it's front-wheel drive. You're putting out 255 foot-pounds of torque, and the engine is relatively high revving. Peak power is at 8,500, peak torque at 8,000, and the car is light, which is a good advantage to have. It weighs 1,080 kilos, which is really good for a sedan of its size. As far as horsepower per tonne, it's putting out just over 360, so not amazing, but at the same time for the power, certainly not bad. And the maximum PP is perhaps a little too high at 498, but I don't think many people would try to race it at that level anyway. As far as price though, this is a 24 grand car. So for 24 grand, it's not exactly a lot of money to lose if you do buy one accidentally and find out that it's not that great. That being said, if you're a sleeper fan, I would recommend checking this car out, because it's one of those cars which you definitely won't use all the time. But if you do like sleeper cars, cars that fly under the radar, cars which nobody uses, but which can actually be surprisingly competitive under the right circumstances, then this is worth checking out. If you're not a fan of those things, then probably not, because realistically speaking, that's all it has to offer. It doesn't have amazing acceleration, it doesn't have an amazing top speed, and it's not overly fun. What it does have is sleeper appeal, a cheap price, and very, very good average speed due to the handling and low weight. So overall, it's a niched vehicle, but one which can appeal to certain drivers. But that's it for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.